All right, we are live. This is episode 1 of the Grab a Hold podcast. I am your host, Justin S., and we will be here to talk all things wrestling. Today's episode is going to be the review of WrestleMania 39, as well as a little bit of talking of what just became public this morning. As of now, this is Monday, April 3rd. This is the day after day 2 of WrestleMania. The official sale has been made public of WWE to the Endeavor Group Holdings, the parenting company of the UFC. So we will be talking about both of those things today. To start off, we'll go ahead and start with that breaking news that WWE has made the purchase of, or rather the sale of, them being sold to Endeavor Group Holdings for the nice price of $9.3 billion. That will go alongside with the UFC's valued amount of $12.1 billion to form a merging company that will be listed at $21 billion as a global live sports and entertainment company. It says that Vince McMahon spoke today that the new company will be well positioned to maximize the value of our combined media rights, enhance sponsorship monetization, develop new forms of content, and pursue other strategic mergers and acquisitions to further bolster our strong stable of brands. This was huge, as we know that this last summer, Vince McMahon was somebody who was not in the news for good reasons, having to leave WWE amongst a scandal of hush money. So to come back, make himself the chairman of the board legitimately and not just on screen, and then wind up literally by the time we are now in April and literally the day after WrestleMania to sell the company. Endeavor will hold a 51% controlling interest while the 49 will be spread across WWE shareholders. It's definitely interesting. It's going to mean a lot of different things. It seems, if you remember when UFC was sold, there was a lot of downsizing because Endeavor wanted their people in. So it could mean some things for some jobs in WWE, and the way that contracts are designed and the way that contracts are dealt with could be very different from how they were once done when it was just WWE by themselves. So going to be interesting. I know that Triple H, as of this recording right now, Triple H was supposed to open Raw tonight, the Raw after WrestleMania, to make some sort of announcement about it and where they stand and where it goes going forward. So we'll talk later more about that in another episode when we review Raw and AEW Dynamite later this week. But I just wanted to touch on that, as that is the breaking news and a big story, especially with Vince McMahon staying on as the chairman of the board. That's the other thing. He is the executive chairman. He will stay in his position for the WWE, as well as Nick Khan as CEO. So there's a lot going on, especially the craziness of WrestleMania. So let's get to WrestleMania. Started off with America the Beautiful, as they always do. SoFi looking so huge and beautiful. LA, SoFi, we're the home of the Chargers and the Rams. That stadium's ridiculous. Really, I mean, just really ridiculous. The Hollywood theme, so they made it look like it was an award show for the stage, not dissimilar to the Oscars. And the movie posters, as far as the video boards went, was actually pretty cool, how they could slip them and flip them in and out, depending on the match or depending on what was going on. So we opened up night one with the Miz and Snoop, and Miz being the host, Snoop being the guy that has been around WWE. He's a Hall of Famer. He's been around a long time, coming in and out and making cameos and appearances at WrestleMania. So we jumped right into match number 1, which was John Cena and Austin Theory. It was one of those things that people kind of knew about if you followed along on the internet. I thought it was a good opener. I mean, it was real fundamental as far as wrestling went. Early on, Cena was established as the guy who's been there, and Theory was supposed to be the guy that wasn't ready. And then he started, being a chicken shit heel, so to speak, or bad guy, and biting him and acting real cocky. And you could see his confidence as the match went on. And it wasn't a super long match by any means, which it didn't need to be as an opener, but the crowd was ready for WrestleMania and they were ready to see Cena. And Theory was a guy who, they expected Cena to, kind of give him his comeuppance type of deal. And Theory winds up, making sure that he gets a low blow and hits his A-Town down finish for the win. And the ref took a bump to get to the low blow spot. I don't know. Knocking out the ref in match number one is a little bit of something that, as far as me kind of being a half old school, half new school type of guy, a referee bumping early, that I don't know. That's a little tough. I understand the cheating. I understand the idea that, we need to get after him and make sure that he understands that, he didn't beat Cena clean. But to use the referee in match number one was definitely an interesting idea. Um, I do think it was the right move. Theory winning. He continues on. He's the guy that can keep running his mouth tonight on Raw and going forward. Well, Cena will more than likely go back to doing his movies or his TV show and won't be around on a regular basis. It wasn't overly fast paced. It was a good paced opener. And as I said, it seemed like good fundamental wrestling. It wasn't trying to do too much. They didn't try to push Theory to do too much and try to outshine Cena in that way. And Cena didn't try to overpower him to make him look like the idiot. So it was a good opener. I really like that one as far as how it set up night number one. Match number two was the four-way men's tag showcase with Gable and Ricochet starting off the match. Eventually, all teams wind up in a brawl. This one, it's one of those things where you want to see some of these guys, and now it's two nights, and they're still trying to find a way to get as many people on the show as possible now that they're not doing the Andre the Giant Battle Memorial on WrestleMania now. So this was their way of doing that for the men's side of things. Gable and Ricochet, like I said, they were the ones that started out going back and forth, the smaller guys in the group of all of them. Eventually, there's a spot where the Viking Raiders go and double Montez Ford, and Braun comes back from behind and double shoulder blocks them. And then Gable comes up, grabs his waist, and rolls through into a German on Braun. I mean, Gable is so underrated. It's one of those things where the poor guy just can't get a break. I mean, the Alpha Academy stuff with Jason Jordan was something that I know a lot of people thought had legs, and it gave him some stability and something that could have been, a long-standing tag team. And then they go a different way. Jordan gets hurt and is now a producer, and Gable's just on the smaller side, and they just kept giving him bad things. I mean, even this stuff with Otis is tough to watch. I mean, it's not even, something where you go, oh, like I could see where they're coming from on this. It's like, all right, like I get it. He's supposed to be a bad guy, and it's supposed to be annoying, but I feel like they can do better by him. I feel like he tries to make the best of whatever he's given. Um, Ivar goes to and misses a moonsault, and Braun hits a big splash. They do the towered suplex spot. Ford at the top holding this spot. Ricochet jumps off and lands on him to push him over. I mean, that tower spot I feel like is becoming almost too common. It's getting one of those things when you have multi-team matches or multi-man matches to the point where you're like, oh, well, they're going to do a tower spot. It having the smallest guy jump over and Ricochet, who's definitely the most athletic, maybe Ford gives him a run for the money being bigger, but I mean, I get it, but it's one of those things where you go, that spot. I feel like they can be more creative than that. Ricochet gets caught on a shooting star press by Dawkins. Ford flies through the air, hits the big splash, and the Profits get the win. There was no super depth to the match. Just like I said, it was more about getting everybody on the card, and they kind of quickly built to it to be like, oh, well, we're going to do these four teams and call it a showcase. And I mean, like I said, there were several moments in the match where you went like, oh, okay, between Ricochet, Braun, Dawkins lighting up Braun on the shoulder tackle was a nice little shining moment for Dawkins. I mean, he's somebody who, excuse me, he's somebody with Ford who kind of gets left out or, not exactly thought about. So it was nice to see him have a little bit of a moment there. Match 3 was Rollins and Logan Paul. Seth freaking Rollins. Paul's entrance, he's harnessed on a quote-unquote zip line coming in. Yeah, it looked cool. I mean, that's his deal, is he's supposed to look cool. They have the Prime Bottle mascot come out with him. Rollins does the Met Gala look with the conductor to help conduct the audience and go from side to side and then everybody together, which was a nice little little touch for them to get him with that. If you saw when Rollins got in the ring, you could see Logan Paul yawning in the background. It was one of those things where it was like, man, he just not even just from an athletic standpoint, but Logan Paul seems to really understand how to make people look at him and make sure he takes his time, make sure that, it gives people an opportunity to see what his facial expressions are, to take his time and make sure that he, sells these moves that, look some of these moves look ridiculous and painfully horrible, and he gets it. It's a slow down thing. It's not a rush. It doesn't seem like he's trying to, do too much or outdo what he's capable of. And again, this was another one of those nights where he had a good showing. There was a couple things here where they did multiple leapfrogs into Paul, throwing Rollins to the outside. It was a nice little just like show of like, look, I can do what you can do. The big right hand, they mentioned about, the titanium in his right hand. He gets it stomped on the steps by Rollins, which was smart. It shows it, and then when he hits it, he can't capitalize on it because his hand is killing him. For those who don't know, KSI was the guy in the mascot of the Prime bottle that is Logan Paul's partner in Prime, the drink and the energy drink. They line it up Rollins on the table. They go to do his big, diving jump, and Rollins pulls KSI onto the table, and Logan splashes KSI. The problem I had with it when they showed the replay was it was pretty obvious that Logan was a little late, that when Rollins pulled KSI, that's when he jumped. So to me, that was just, I mean, in real time, I bet you it didn't look like that hardly at all. But on the slow-mo, on the replay, you could see that Rollins was kind of pulling him and Logan was a little late, probably a hair too late. The coast to coast that he sets up, Rollins hits the super kick, nice little shot of Shawn Michaels and Shelton Benjamin type deal, and he gets the stomp and gets the win. It was a good match. I mean, this was one that people talked like, hey, this has the potential to go ahead and steal the show. I think that when you look at what goes on, I mean, it was enough athleticism and enough wrestling and enough entertainment. It wasn't something that had to be a wrestling clinic, and it didn't need to be all, the athleticism of showing off how to jump from spot to spot. So it really was a nice mixture. I mean, obviously Rollins was the guy that should have been leading the match with the experience, and it showed. I mean, he did a great job. And based on coming out of this match, if you look at who Logan Paul's worked with now, Rollins on Saturday night, he's worked with Roman, he's worked with Miz, who's a vet, and you look at these things that you go, man, like he's really having these matches that are killing it. And I don't want to take anything away from him because obviously, he is, putting in the work. There's a lot of people that say he relentlessly works on these things. But at the same time, I'm curious to know what happens when he's not working with some of these guys. I'm not saying that it's got to be a brand new guy, but maybe, a guy that's on their way up, maybe somebody that doesn't have the same experience level as a Roman or a Seth Rollins, and gets the opportunity to kind of work with them and see where that goes, rather than just trying to put him with the big names. I feel like at some point you're going to run out of that. So you got to be able to bring people with him and get them in the mix with him. The fourth match on the card was the women's 6-man tag match with Trish, Lita, and Becky versus Damage Control. They had Damage Control come straight out. All, colors were coordinated. And then they did the comic book entrance for Trish, Lita, and Becky. Personally, I get it. It's Hollywood. They got to have some extra touches on the entrances. I didn't care for this one. I thought that the entrance-wise, that they should have just stuck to what they normally do and let them come out one by one, meet each other on the ramp, and walk down together. That, to me, this match was about star power. It was about Trish and Lita being on there for the fact that they are Hall of Famers. They have the name. Becky's clearly somebody who is locked in and has her character under control. Bayley and Damage Control, victim maybe of bad booking or not getting enough wins and not enough build for them. But I mean, good spot for them for who they're wrestling. But when you look at who was in there, I feel like when you look at Trish and Lita and Becky, it was pretty obvious that Dakota Kai and Io Sky on the other side were no match for the two that were pulled in. So from a nostalgic standpoint, it was cool. That's why I think that from the entrance standpoint, they wanted to see that. They wanted to see who they know and who they love and who you've seen before. Um, the gear that Trish and Lita wore were obviously an homage to previously. Trish has been very open about that it was back at WrestleMania 21 that she wore the suspenders and the gear that or similar gear that she wore with the color scheme and things, and it was an ode to that. Um, Lita as well, wearing the pants and the fishnet, but also wearing a G string underneath and doing the rip off of the shirt and throw it down spot at the end with the homage to the previous time. Early on, they let Becky do the work. They cut off the ring. They jumped her. Then they had the spot where Lita threw Io into the turnbuckle. But I tell you, man, like for everything that Trish and Lita are, and the last run, I believe that Lita had with it might have been Becky, that she went ahead and had a couple, good runs with her, and then before that, she was in like super good shape. She had a few good runs and was a part of multiple setups and matches and cameos, and she looked really strong for everything that those things were. This one was just a little off. I mean, she looked unsure. She looked like she had some happy feet in some moments, and really just looked out of sync. It was unfortunate. I mean, it's one of those things where you like them, but you don't want to see that. And then on top of that, it was pretty obvious if you were looking as somebody who's a regular or hardcore wrestling fan, you could clearly see that Io forgot a spot, that Bailey was trying to tell her something coming out of one of the tags where she was supposed to get her, and she didn't. And you can audibly hear Bailey go, like it was supposed to be something. And then later on, there was a spot where she went out of the ring and was supposed to be back in, and then had to jump back in to be able to pick up on the spot, as well as the ref. I mean, the ref was out of position multiple times, missing counts, and it just became one of those things where you're like, whoa, like, come on, dude, you got to be on top of these things. Trish looked really strong. She did the flipping spot where she did the stratosphere, I believe she calls it, where they helped her and did the Hurricane Rana to the outside. The crowd went crazy when they all three hit their finishers at the end. And to me, it looks like if Trish was doing this on a regular basis, she'd still be a regular person at the top of the card. She looked very, very sure. She looked very strong in what she was doing. And obviously the crowd liked it for who they were and the nostalgia of it. And, Becky's huge over, so it worked out really well. I felt like it was a match to have on there, but I just didn't care for it as much as I thought I would. And some of that might have been due to the fact that like it just looks like a couple of them, including Lita, just looked real slow hitting the ropes. Like I said, looked happy feet and unsure at times of like when to go, when to stop. So I think that kind of took something away from it as well. Match number 5 was Ray and Dom Mysterio. The entrances were awesome. I mean, this was the WrestleMania entrances on night one that people were like, oh, okay, like this is WrestleMania. Dom doing the prison video. It's funny now that like they're doing it so serious when it wasn't so serious, but at the same time, I feel like if they would have took it serious from the beginning, it might have come off a little better. Um, people don't like him. I mean, I have people that I know that are very much against him and they can't stand when they see him, can't stand what they're doing with him. And it's funny, like the gear that he wore right away was picked up on with the mask and the pants, how it had the mix of Ray's gear from Halloween Havoc 97 with the purple, and then also with Eddie Guerrero's gear, and how like before it would say Latino on the back, his said mommy, and how it had the style with the shattered pieces, which was his original gear when he came to WWE, then the evolution of that. So there was a mix of Eddie and Ray in his gear, which was cool. And then Ray coming out with Snoop, coming out, riding alongside him, and nothing but a G thing playing. I mean, and then mixing with Eddie's music into his. I mean, that one was really dope. There was a lot of one-ups early in this match between the two of them. Ray, looking strong, trying to establish, that he's dad still. He's still dad. He's still whoop your ass. That's what he's doing. And of course, in those moments where he's looking strong, Dom's cowering away. No thanks. I don't want none. I'm sorry. That business, setting him up, which was perfect. I, I didn't know really what Dom was going to do early on because, when he came into the WWE, it was obviously with no crowd. And a lot of that, like, people were just happy to see, like, oh, well, hopefully Ray and Dom get a chance to tag together. That's his dad. We want to see that and all that good stuff, which was cool. But at the same time, people were talking about, Hook on AEW, like, oh, well, he'll be the guy. He'll be the guy that moves farther along than Dom does as far as these two younger guys. And whatever people thought about Dom has completely changed since he's been in Judgment Day. That's given him a whole new breed of confidence. It's given him a whole new element to be able to play with and be that guy who cowers away and really does like run off. So I mean, it's one of those things where he's definitely come a long way. And then when you watch him, maybe it was his dad leading him that helped the whole thing, but I really feel like he really had a hold on what he was trying to do in the ring as well. It wasn't just him trying to sit back and let Ray do all the work, which was very cool. Um, and then, obviously everybody goes crazy for the belt spot. He gives them the whooping. Everybody goes crazy for that. He comes back and throws water in his sister's face, which, I mean, that was a creative way to get Ray to, come over and get involved and then him get the upper hand on him. It was definitely creative. And the crowd goes crazy for when his mom slapped him. I mean, that was a big pop. So not only did you get the whooping, but you got mom to smack him too. So both parents got a piece of him. But I tell you what, they set up that spot where he throws Ray over his head, flipping into the corner, and whoa. I mean, that it looked insane and it looked so strong. Um, then they bring in, Priest and Balor, and Bad Bunny gets involved, and the LWO is now here with Escobar and those guys. I I felt like they could have done without so much interference. If you wanted to do the Bunny thing, then you should have had like Priest come out with him early, right from the jump, and meet him out there, and then or just have him be the guy that runs in, has the chain. Bunny pulls the chain from Priest because they have history, and then now Priest gets caught in the moment, and now he gets kicked out, and now it's just the two of them, and they got to finish up. I felt like it was a little excessive for what that is. I get that it's setting it up for Backlash in Puerto Rico with Bad Bunny being the host, which means he'll probably be involved in some way, especially with Priest and him having history from WrestleMania past when he wrestled. So I thought it was a great match. They really, really went crazy for Bunny and the 619 in the win. But like I said, I just didn't think that it needed all that interference. The next match on the card was Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair. This one had something to prove. I mean, they built this one, and it's hard to tell where kind of people are now with Charlotte because she's such an established winner and she's such an established champion that people are kind of over it. Rhea's supposed to be, chicken shit with Dom and causing problems and the Eradicator, the shit stir, essentially. And people were ready for her to win. People wanted her to win, myself included. I was ready to see her win. She's super talented. Being the face, so to speak, of the Judgment Day is, the ultimate badass in that group right now. You got, Balor, who's kind of the leader or supposedly the leader, Dom, who's the chicken shit guy that hides behind her, and you got Priest, who is the muscle. And she's stepped into that spot as no, I'm the badass. Like, it doesn't matter that I'm the only girl. And right out of the gate, both of them were hard hitting. They both look strong. One of the things I will say too is from watching WWE, AEW, even Impact at times, and some Ring of Honor, these two look like grown ass women. I mean, I get it that, Charlotte's like 6 foot tall. She's a former collegiate athlete. Rhea is no slouch. And it just looked like two grown women going at it. It didn't look like, oh, well, this girl's really small, so she's going to have the David versus the Goliath situation, or, she's going to have to come from underneath and figure it out. I felt like they really, really got after it, and it looked really, really hard hitting, really, really powerful. Rhea got the advantage early with, power moves, and it seemed more that the crowd was more for the wooing for Charlotte rather than pro Charlotte, which I get it. That's the thing. Um, the spike DDT out of the Riptide reversal by Charlotte looked clean. Rhea making it look good. Um, then they do the super German where Charlotte winds up hitting her stomach flat, and people are just all about it. I mean, they were really just all about it. The German suplex spot where Charlotte landed on her face, and it was literally on her face, gave her nose mat burn. I mean, that was how far along they were at that point, was like her nose drug into that. And I mean, I don't know if that was she was supposed to lay flat or she was supposed to catch all the way over, but somebody missed the rotation. And I mean, it looked rough. Even WWE's Instagram posted it with the words "yikes." So if that tells you anything, um, they both fought out of finishers every time early on, and then there was a great setup for the Riptide and the kick out, and they just kept going, and they got even more rowdy for the 2 count on the spear, which was good. So I mean, it was even one of those things where they they really just got after it. And when they went for the punch exchange and the big boot, it seemed like, oh man, like they're how much longer can they really do this? And then the figure eight set up the top rope Riptide. It was up and down. It had an argument to go last. I mean, it really did. I understand why it didn't, but if they put it on last, I wouldn't have been mad. Um, the one thing that I thought was interesting too is that they got a camera shot of Charlotte on the floor, basically smiling and happy with what happened and how it went, and it really was one of those moments like 3 years ago, where Sasha was happy for Bianca 3 years ago, I believe, because this is Bianca's third win this year, which we'll get to here shortly. But they showed that again, and she was shown happy and crying. So she gets her revenge back. She beat Charlotte, this time in front of people, in front of, I believe they said it was 80,000 that night. Which was when she lost in front of nobody. So she gets her revenge back. Now it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Is this how they're going to use to break her away from Judgment Day? Because she's a SmackDown Women's Champion, not the Raw Women's Champion. And Judgment Day is a part of Raw. So we'll have to see what happens there. It leaves that open, and where they go with Charlotte now. Because Charlotte has been off and on TV for a while now. It's like every time she goes away, she comes back and finds herself either as the champion or thrown right back into the championship mix. And where she's at right now, and if you look at SmackDown and the showcase that they just had, they focused on putting all those teams together. And now it's like, who do you work with? Becky, who is old shoe, is on Raw. Bayley is on Raw. Io and Dakota are with Bayley, and Bianca Raw. So who do you work with? Who do you put her with? I mean, do you put her with somebody like a Shotzi? I mean, I personally would like to see her with a Raquel Rodriguez. Give her some experience, let her work with her. That could definitely be interesting and lead to down the road Raquel and Rhea at some point. Which I know some people were mad this year also that Rhea wound up choosing Charlotte instead of Bianca after winning the Rumble. But clearly this match was on point, so it was a good call. As they moved on, they went back as like a breather and a letdown in between that and the main event for night number 1. They had the Miz come out with Snoop, and Pat McAfee surprises everybody. There was talks during the week about Pat and whether or not he would be there. And there was a lot of questions because of where he stands right now with WWE. It was unsure. So it was like, okay, well, what happens? What happens now? Where does he go from here? So to have him show up, people loved it. They let him talk a little bit. He kind of talked over Snoop a couple times. And the funniest part about it was when they set it up that Snoop the entire time is like talking on his way out. No, this isn't my problem. This is your problem. I rap. I don't wrestle. You guys got it. This is your business. Handle your business. Pat out there doing his thing. He has these moments. I mean, say what you want, but he has these moments, and he's another guy that, like the Logan Pauls, like the Bad Bunnies, that puts the time in, and it looks good. Pat's Pat's punch and Logan's punches are better than 3/4 of the guys on the show. I mean, it's funny. I get it. They got George Kittle involved. He clotheslines Miz, and Pat does the front flip onto both of them, and short, quick, to the point. He hits the big punt. Pat gets the win. It was definitely a palate cleanser before they got to what everybody wanted in the main event of night one, which was the Usos and Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. From the storyline standpoint, I understand why this went on last, and the crowd was all about it. I have a friend that was at the show both nights, and night number one, he was just talking about the energy in the place and how crazy it was from beginning to end and into the main event, and how the main event was just damn near perfect for the way that everybody went out on it. Early on in this match, I mean, you have, or in the entrances rather, not even in the match, but they have little Uzi Vert come out with the Uso to rap a little and do the Usos piece. And I mean, if you didn't think that Sammy was over, just listen to the reaction he got. I don't know if you make him world champion based on who's in there with Roman and Cody, but I mean, he's definitely a top guy. You can't argue it anymore. And Kevin has established himself as one of those, regular pieces and a regular guy at the top of the card that they can rely on. So having both of them together, and everybody that's a hardcore wrestling fan knowing that they have a history and that they know their community of fans that know their history going back to Ring of Honor and beyond. They showed photos of them baby faced and Sammy with, no beard or light beard and the shaved head. It just looked like a whole different person. And the build in this story has been so good. 9-10 months at this point from where it's come from, and building all the way to this. I mean, it's been about as good as it's been, and it expanding in the quote unquote universe of the bloodline. I mean, it's been the thing that basically has revitalized WWE and brought them back to the winning side and giving them the momentum that people are tuned in every week to see what happens with Roman, to see what happens with Solo, to see what happens with the Usos and whoever it is they're dealing with. Who's the thorn in their side this week? Who's the thorn in their side that they're dealing with for this month? And, Jay being the guy that was so anti-Sammy early and then being so happy with him really was one of those things that when they made it seem like, oh, he chose Sammy, I was like, oh, like they're going this route? Like, all right, well, I guess that means Solo and Jimmy are going to team. And then when he turned on him anyway, I was like, that's my brother. It was like, oh, they got me. They got me with that. So it was a good thing. And I've heard people say it. I know I've heard Jim Cornette and Brian Last say it. I've heard, many people talk about it on different shows, that they have so many options on ways that they can go out of these things with the Usos and with Roman, that this has really just kept things really unpredictable and must see. That like you'll hang around on SmackDown for 2 hours just to see the promo at the end or to see who's going to show up for them and who's not. That was a big deal. So this being the main event made the most sense based on the build and the investment that people have had in it. And I think if nothing else, that the bloodline universe, so to speak, and the world that has been created within WWE with these guys has shown you how important it is investing into characters. That great matches are great. I mean, it's awesome. I'm an AEW fan, just as much as, the next guy. But at the same time, it's like we've gotten away from what AEW seemingly was going to be as an alternative. And now it's just about like, well, let's just put matches on and, give people matches that they like, because we do pay-per-views quarterly, every 3 months, 4 months. So we got to make sure those are big, and, we'll just have good matches in between. It sounds good on paper, but when people aren't invested into what you're doing or the characters themselves individually, you can see who the popular guys are. The FTR guys, they know them. They have the podcast with Dax. They have, they follow those guys from WWE and they know who they are. MJF, a guy who's been part of probably the most shining moments in AEW currently on the roster. And it's all about him just being committed to what he's doing and investing and being honest. There's stories that have come out in this process about him telling truths in his promos and being honest. People that are invested in what you're doing as far as a person, or that's something that's relatable or that can make you feel something, that's what you're going to get behind. And this whole storyline with Sammy and the Usos and Kevin has really done that on a deep level that hasn't happened in a long time, and in wrestling period. So to be able to have a 10-month build to this, it was very apparent why this went on last. And to start the match, Jay and Sammy were the ones that started off early on. Usos established that they're the team, they're the better team, and dominating and cutting off the ring and making Sammy, continually just take the beating, take the whooping. They keep him in their half of the ring, taunting Kevin and taunting the crowd, and there was a lot of early on that you go, oh man, like I forgot. Sometimes I forget how good the Usos really are. Um, with what they do in the ring, not just how they've done in promos and, like I said, how they've made people invest, but their ring work has been pretty good. Um, they have Owens do the flipping senton and the frog splash, off the apron, and then inside the ring, the brain buster on the apron, leading to Sammy doing an Uso splash for a 2 count. I mean, the crowd was up the whole time. They're doing Olay chants for Sammy. And then again, here it comes back. Super kicks on Sammy, hit the 1D on KO, and Jimmy gets pulled out for a sunset flip for 2. Usos wind up double spine bustering Kevin through the table. Sammy gets the 1D and kicks out. And it's the first time that anybody's ever kicked out of the 1D. So Cole's going crazy. He's losing it, just losing it. And then Kevin gets in, comes back down, later on, and Jay kicks out of a stunner, and the crowd can't believe it. And now they're just both going for punches. Usos hit double super kicks, and they hit an Uso splash, and then when it comes to the point where that gets a 2 count. Sammy hits his haluva kick on Jay, make sure it's on Jay, then 2 more. So now Sammy's doing what they did to him, adding those extra shots, adding those extra punches and kicks or chair shots or whatever it is they had been doing. So this time it was the haluva kick. So, he throws those in there and goes after them with vengeance of, you could have gotten out, and this is what happens. Hits the 3 haluva kicks, gets the pin for the 3, and the crowd is clapping, they're singing, and it's, as Cornette would say, baby's thrown in the air. It's one of those things where they really, really just had them from beginning to end, and it was the right way to go out. It was the right call to make them the main event. I get Rhea and Charlotte killed it. I get why they would be looked at as somebody who could have been in the main event. But, Hunter even said it in the press conference after, like, the storyline driven stuff that makes the most impact is going to go on last. And they did. I mean, they've had, people in the palm of their hand for months now, and it made sense. And Sammy and Kevin winning, now you take that away from the Usos. They don't have the titles. And going into night 2, what does that mean for Roman? Does that mean that the Usos are, in trouble? Does that mean that going into Monday that they're going to have problems? What does that mean? So it definitely was a good way to go out. And the card from top to bottom on night 1 was really formatted well. They really did a good job. It really just set things into motion where you had a lot of up and down. The breathers were in the right spots. It didn't seem like everybody was trying to, outdo the next guy as far as I'm going to do all the moves. So by the time we get to the end, there's nothing left to do. It really was really sound on night 1 where it just went for real good flow, ebb and flow of the show. It was really well. And so going into night 2, it gets announced that Brock and Omos are going to kick off the show this time. And there's been reports that Brock likes to be first because that means he gets to get back to his plane and go home. Maybe. I mean, he's not a travel guy. Everybody knows that. So one of the things that, like, I noticed that even, my kids noticed that when they saw this, that they looked at Brock and they looked at Omos and they were like, Brock looks small, Dad. I'm like, I know, this guy's huge. They did a good job of starting with this one. They have Brock come out to the pyro. Everybody loves it. He made Brock look like a regular guy. He didn't look huge. And then especially early on, they started him off by throwing Brock when he tries to double leg him, and then he slams him with a regular, just regular body slam. It was very easy to see that he was very strong, and they were establishing Brock as the guy that was not the powerhouse, unstoppable animal that he's used to being. That this time it was going to be different, and that Brock was going to have to try more than just overpowering somebody or matching power with power, because now Brock's behind the eight ball. Brock did a great job of selling. I mean, I feel like Brock's a guy that when you talk to him, as far as from wrestling perspectives, that like if he's in a match with somebody, he'll do it for people at the right times or the right reasons, but he's just not going to take bumps just to take bumps. So for him to sell for somebody like Omos, who is still very new and still very, green to especially WrestleMania in the moment, it was very cool to see him working so hard and Brock, selling and moving. Um, the crowd was up waiting for the German suplex. Brock tries to get him up with the F5. He can't do it. His back's hurt. Picks him up on the second one and hits it and gets the 3 count. They both look real strong. The only thing I wish would have been different is I wish that Omos would have kicked out on the first F5. I feel like that would have made him look a little stronger. It would have put him in a spot where, it looked like, oh, that wasn't enough. So I got to hit him again and, give everything he has to get that off. So, I mean, and if that's the only complaint, I feel like they did a good job. It wasn't long. It didn't need to be. They were both big. They were both powerful. Omos showed that, I can be better than this. He got me once. That's what it was. He got me once. Well, that's all this was. I can get him again. And to me, that, kudos to Brock for really elevating that dude and putting himself out there. He didn't have to work with a newer guy. He could have waited or said, no, I'd rather work with somebody more established. So kudos to him. The second match, much like day one, day two had the 4-way women's showcase match. Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez, Shayna Baszler and Ronda, Shotzi and Natty, Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville. Liv started off giving a strong effort. You could see it early on. I don't know if it was Chelsea or if it was Shotzi, but somebody missed something in one of their spots where she tried to flip her. There was a triple bomb on Shayna, and Chelsea at one point, Chelsea's, character is this Karen character. She's trying to jump away from Raquel, so she jumps out onto people who just happen to be standing there. Then they have Raquel use Liv as a weapon and power bomb her onto everybody on the outside. Shotzi was another one that looked like she was, hitting the ropes hard. She looked like she looked like she had her working boots on. She was really pushing to try and have a good effort and have a good show. And then almost seemingly out of nowhere in the end, Baszler and Ronda get involved by, throwing Chelsea out, and they go for the armbar on Shotzi and whatnot. And then you see Baszler doesn't have a boot on. She's literally with a taped ankle and a bare foot, and nobody says anything. There wasn't like she got hurt. There wasn't like, she had to be checked on. It was like they just jumped in and did the finish and they were gone. I think overall, if that's what they were meant to do, as far as like not really doing anything and then just jump in for the finish and be done with it, hey, great. Like, then you did your job. But to me, this whole thing with Ronda is just about run its course. She's not, the badass that when she came in, the lore that was. She comes and goes. She took an extended amount of time off and comes back, and they thought, oh, well, she's been gone, so people will love her. But all she does is, run her mouth on the side, and it's not like, it's in character. She's doing that. Like, she's just saying it, and then comes back and expects people to just be like, oh, well, she said it. Like, she's a human being. She's not on the show, so she can say whatever she wants because she's not at work. Like, come on. Like, it's not the deal. Have more respect than that. And then on top of that, like, you're working with your friend, who you get the opportunity to work with your friend. Like, that's great. But at the same time, you can't sit here and say that, oh, well, I can phone it in. And that's what it's looking like right now, is like she's just going through the motions. Like, oh, I want the tag belt. Oh, okay, cool. But we're supposed to believe that you and Shayna are going to beat the shit out of Becky and Lita. Like, yeah, Lita's struggling right now, but Becky's strong as shit. And right now, if you're going Becky to Ronda, Ronda's going to get beat. So I just, the women's match, again, just like the men's match, was just to get more people on the card. You wind up having the 4-way, and it's good for the them to get paid and have a WrestleMania payday. That's great, but the match, I don't feel like did anything for it. It wasn't a good look as a follow up to how excited people were with Brock and Omos with it being such a short match. I think that if they would have went with match number 3, which we'll get to next, which is Sheamus, Gunther, and Drew McIntyre, that should have been the next one because it was another hard hitting match that went a long time. I mean, these guys beat the living shit out of each other between clubbing blows, forearms, chops, punches. I mean, they just look like when they got out behind the curtain, they just looked at each other and said, I'm going to apologize now because when we get out there, I'm just going to let you have it. And they did. I mean, it looked like they did from beginning to end. They just beat the shit out of each other. Then you look at how they set up Walter with the forearm clubs from Sheamus and then the chops from Drew, where they were trading chest clubbing, chop, chest clubbing, chop. Then they go later on. Sheamus gets 28 clubs on Drew. I mean, it just, people were crazy. All 3 guys felt like they were viable winners to what was going on. They definitely felt like at any point one of the 3 guys could win, and it didn't seem to lean one way where you're like, oh, I know this guy's going to win. Like, or, oh, I know this guy's going to get the win. It didn't seem like that whatsoever. It seemed like all 3 of them were viable winners, and it definitely seemed like they were all going as hard as they could and letting the other guys have it, which was really good. So heads off to those guys. And Gunther, I mean, as lean as he is, I feel like maybe because it's his ring gear and that lean physique just shows through. I mean, he was a heavier dude before. I get it, maybe even unhealthy, but I mean, no knee pads. There's no tape. I mean, he's literally just a boots and tight and trunks guy, and that's good. But I feel like with his lean physique, I mean, he's just different, and that makes him stand out. It's one of those things that he chops sound like a shotgun, and everybody can hear it. I mean, I had a friend who was at the show, and I asked him, could you hear him from where you were sitting? Could you hear him? He goes, it echoed. I mean, all 3 of them, they echoed, and his were the loudest. So hopefully they got something up their sleeve for him, and he doesn't just wind up getting pushed back as the Intercontinental Champion of like, oh, well, we'll just have him, work with this guy for now and throw it together. Like, hopefully they put some thought into him because he's definitely got an opportunity to be special. He's different. He stands out, and he's got the opportunity to do some good stuff for sure. And I mean, he's had a crazy year being so new to WWE television. I mean, yeah, he was in NXT and NXT UK and whatnot, but and before that he was on the independents. So to be on TV now and have the year that he's had, it's been crazy and crazy in a good way. The 4th match on night number 2 was Bianca and Oscar, and this one was tough for the fact that when you looked at both women are strong in who they are. People care about Bianca individually. They care about Oscar individually. They both, had lots of action in this match. It was a good showing for both, but it just felt like there wasn't enough story or enough reason for people to care. The crowd was pretty dead until the end. It seemed like, they would have spots where they would clap for them or that they would, react to them or just react to the action, but there just wasn't enough to invest in them until you got to the finish, and that's unfortunate. Like, I know that there was some talk afterwards about, Bianca and how, this is the 3rd year in a row she's, beat Sasha, beat Becky, and now she beat Asuka. Like, that looks good. I mean, it's great. So if you think that highly of her, then why not give her a little more depth and a little more substance with the storytelling? I mean, give her an opportunity to be able to be one of those people at the top that is able to go ahead and go, all right, like, let's do this. Like, we can go ahead and, bring her in the main storylines as well. It's just one of those things where I felt like both girls worked hard, and I felt bad for both of them by the time it was over because there just wasn't enough invested in it. But hats off to both women for putting on, a hard fought match. The next thing was another surprise. Like the night before was Pat McAfee. Then this time they bring out Shane, and the crowd goes crazy. And this was unfortunate. They put this together. Shane's going to go off on him. He starts throwing punches on Miz, goes to do a leapfrog and gets hurt, what we found out later in the press conference was that he tore his quad on the leapfrog, and then he tried to get up, and his leg buckled again. So they called an audible, and Snoop jumped in the ring. And again, his comments were just hilarious. Him saying, "Oh, this is you. This is not me. This is you." And you handle your business and all this stuff. And he jumps in, pops Miz twice, does a people's elbow that wasn't the prettiest, but he handled it. And again, like people, and Hunter said this afterwards in the press conference, there's a lot of wrestlers they wouldn't know what to do, or that would freak out when something happens like that. So for Snoop to be like, "I got it. Like, tell me what to do. I got it." Like, that was a big deal. And, it was filler. Obviously, it was filler. It was supposed to be a little bit of a break after the Bianca and Oscar match, because they had to have time to kind of reset, because the Hell in a Cell match with Edge and the Demon Finn Balor was next. So, I mean, like I said, it wasn't great. I don't know if Shane, I believe that Shane was supposed to beat him, but unfortunately he got hurt, and that's a shame. That when you look at an injury like a torn quad, that definitely could be the end of Shane as far as competing in the ring every so often. So hopefully he gets better. Hopefully things, there's no issues in his recovery, and it gets to a point where he's healthy quick. Match number 5, as I said, was the Hell in a Cell match between Edge and Finn Balor. There was a tie-in to the Pope's Exorcist movie. They're in LA. It's part of the sponsorship deal with movies, and they tie it in together with the whole Demon Balor thing. And they have Edge come up with his Brood entrance, and he's wearing like this like disco ball style mask, and he's got wings like a demon, and it was really cool. But it could have done without the Russell Crowe talking piece. Like, if it would have just stood on its own and with the video package, it would have been fine. I know that from the people that were at Mania, a lot of people said that during the video package, it just got booed incredibly. That like they didn't want that. They didn't care about that. Um, and because Edge's entrance was, somewhat elaborate, it made the demon entrance look basic, because he didn't even come up out of the smoke. He was in front of all the smoke on the stage. And then as he's walking down the stage, they give him smoke tubes, purple smoke tubes that he walks with and holds and just kind of weaves back and forth. So he just uses them. It wasn't, I mean, I felt like they really could have done a better job with it being WrestleMania for the Demon's entrance. I mean, it looked like an NXT, maybe Raw type Demon entrance. And this was WrestleMania in front of 81,000, which is the number they gave in night 2. So I felt like they kind of slipped up on that one. Then, they start to play early into Balor being in the demon character, where he's no selling and a lot of stuff, where he gets hit and comes right back to it. And as they go to get weapons under the ring, they're colored. They're red, they're purple. I mean, it's getting too cute. It's one of those things where you don't need it. Just keep them what they are. People know what they are. This was the only match on the card that was like this, that had the weapons like this. So what was the point? What, I mean, did you think like, oh, we got to make it differently than the other ones? There wasn't one like that. They didn't need to do this with the colors. Unless you're trying to, play to an audience of children, of like, oh, look, like this is colors, like, which for the Hell in a Cell match, I doubt it. They really didn't need it. I feel like that took away from it. It played into the, oh, well, he's the demon, and this is us being cute about it, and haha, wink, wink, we get it. It just, to me, they should have left it alone and left them what they were. You use the weapons, but the colors weren't necessary. And then they had a spot where, Edge just got wore out with a kendo stick, and the welts just started right away on his back. You could see it right away. Then he got shotgun drop kick through a table. Shout out to Christian by Edge by hitting the kill switch in the middle. And as they grab a ladder, Edge throws it at Balor, and it hits him in the head and busts him open. And at first people were like, oh, what's going on? It's slowing down. And then you could see the blood on the mat, that like it looked like somebody just popped him real ugly. It wound up being like a 6-inch gash, I believe, which is what he posted on Instagram. The match got slowed down. The crowd no longer wanted to see that, because they stopped the match. Essentially, they bring in a medical person to look at him. If you're gonna do that, then it should be just to make sure he doesn't have a concussion, or that he's not going to bleed out right there. That's it. Like, let him finish. There, to me, If he says he's okay, he's okay. The a lot of the paint that he was wearing, they said masked how much blood was showing. You were fine. I mean, I get it. It's not supposed to be super bloody and things of that nature, but there's a time and place that warrants blood. And inside Hell in a Cell, when it's supposed to be this vicious thing, that warrants blood. So you got to think that for the most part, that's the way that that should have went. So they stopped. It killed all the momentum. It really did. And later you find out that he got shot with a numbing agent in the forehead and then went ahead and got staples put in during the match. So I mean, toughness, major toughness, crazy toughness on his part to just take the stitch or the staples rather, and then continue on. Unfortunately, they said that they had to rush to the finish of the match because of that reason, because they wanted him to get checked out thoroughly and that they wanted to make sure that he was checked out in the back. Um, so there was more, but it seemed like they sped up and it left a lot of time and a lot of filler through the whole thing. Um, so going into Cody and Roman as the main event, I mean, obviously it was going to be the main event no matter what. Cody being the Royal Rumble winner, Roman being 944 days champion at that point. Um, they had Cody come out, the pyro. They had him. He walked to his family, picked up his daughter, had his daughter wave to the crowd, hugged his mom, his sister, his wife, which was all very cool. You could see that it was very apparent that he was trying to take in the moment, that he was trying to enjoy it for what it was, that he was trying to make sure that he didn't take what was going on for granted. It was very very real to him in that moment. And then the piano player, six piano players for Roman's entrance. And it takes 3 days for him to walk to the ring and do his pyro. So they were cool with that, especially how the last match got sped up. Cody looked shredded. I mean, he was jacked to the gills. Looked like again even during the ring entrances, he was as far or ring announcing entrances, he just introductions rather. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for. That he just looked like he was trying to take it all in. That he was trying to enjoy the moment and be present. Roman just looked like I've been here before. I mean, he's so good right now. From his facial expressions to the point of him looking around and giving people different looks or people say something and he reacts. He's just so good right now, and it's very very obvious to everybody that he's the guy right now and at the top of his game. Um, Early on, the crowd was very very pro Cody. Um, it was really one of those things where he was establishing that he was, I'm here. I'm letting you know I'm here. I'm either going to be a step ahead or I'm going to be right here hanging with you. And they got to a point where he did it a couple times and it gave Roman a reason to slow down, so he could slow the match down, control the pace. Cody hits a big, beautiful drop kick, and again goes to gain control, goes to catch the disaster kick. Roman catches him with a powerbomb. Now, it's one of those things where Cody, goes, oh okay, like I'm gonna hits the skin the cat off the cutoff by Roman, back into control, slamming him on the ramp. It was one of those things where it was very much oh okay, like he's trying, and they were very cognizant of a count out, so they would go and break the count and then come back. And the theme in this match was that Cody was doing what he could and he was proving like I got his number, I can hang with him, we can do this. And then Solo hits him with a chair shot in the ribs when the ref's not looking, and Roman comes by and hits the drive-by drop kick. Then a little later, Solo gets a leg trip and stops Cody's momentum, and Roman puts Cody on the table, and you're thinking like, all right, he's going to try and power bomb him or something. Cody flips him into the back body drop through the table. As they were coming in and out, Cody hit him with the quick slam out of the corner like Goldust or Dustin, hits the Cody Cutter 2 count. And again, the crowd is on top of this. They've waited. It's been a rough night. There's been a lot of up and down, and they were just waiting for this. Then Solo goes and takes Cody's weight belt from one of the young men in the crowd, which happened to be Brody Lee's son, little Brody, and hits Cody square in the back with the weight belt. And the ref doesn't see it, but he hears it. So he throws Solo out. And now, again, Heyman just so good. the expression on his face, like that shouldn't have happened like that. That's not what was supposed to happen. So now it's supposed to be one-on-one. Now that Solo's gone, it's supposed to be one-on-one. He hits a sunset flip off the spear attempt, the leg sweep into the figure four. He kicks out, running into a spear. And now Roman's showing his disbelief. Now his face is showing it. And now he's pissed. So he's going to show, and he's going to hit the ground and pound. Gets the guillotine, and Cody holds up the strong arm, does the jumping body lock, and pulls guard, pulling him down with the guillotine. And Cody slips his head out and does his own ground and pound. It was great for that. I mean, most people thought, okay, they're going to do a 3-arm drop, and Cody will fire up. No, he slipped his head out, and he kept fighting on his own. Like, I'm just not going out this way. Then there was a ref bump here. So they do the ref bump here, and it turns into a Superman punch, and now there's a double down. And then the Usos jump in and jump Cody, hit the 1D on him. Owens and Zayn jump in the ring. Huge pop for them coming out of nowhere. They didn't come down the ramp. They came out of the crowd. They get rid of the Usos. Stunner and Haluva kick on Roman, which was a nice touch, having Sammy hit the Haluva kick on him to kind of be like, haha, I'm going to be the one that brings you down and cost you all this stuff. Cody crawls over, the ref's back, and boom, 2 count. And the crowd is just all in it. They're all pro Cody. They're waiting for their moment, just waiting. And Cody pulls out the bionic elbow. He hits the drop down, face smack. Hits 2 crossroads. Heyman distracts the ref, and Solo comes in from out of the crowd and hits Cody with the spike. Roman hits the spear, and it's over. For everything that they built to on the roads to WrestleMania, it was over. And there was a lot of shock, a lot of disbelief. There was a lot of booing. The shot over Cody's shoulder where he was, Roman's already back up the ramp after it had happened and holding the titles up, and he's just in disbelief. And it's like, and he's telling the crowd he's sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The question becomes now, did they have the right finish? Did you miss a window? Did you do it right? Did you have the right guy win? And one of the things that made WWE so good during its peak of the Attitude Era in the early 2000s was that they left more questions than answered on a weekly basis. With the Usos losing, Roman winning, now you go, well, what happens? What happens to the 2 guys that are supposed to be champions with him? What happens to Cody now? Because Cody doesn't want this to be over. Cody is going to want another shot at him. So where do you go with it? And when you look at the options that they have, again, they have a lot of options on the table. Like, are the Usos going to stay with Roman? Is Roman going to put up with this? Or is there going to be some sort of punishment? And will that be the breaking point for the Usos? Is Cody going to continue, and continue to pursue this and continue to go farther into this now that at this point, the dream of what he wanted for his family and all those things is now, at WrestleMania, and the biggest WrestleMania, from all successful measures, is now over. Where do you go? So it'll be interesting to see what they do tonight. Like I said, as I record this, the Raw after WrestleMania has now begun. So it'll be interesting to see which direction this goes and how far they take it with Backlash. WrestleMania Backlash in Puerto Rico will be the next premium live event. I know some people will argue that Cody is going to be fine and that people come out feeling even more sorry for him and want to see him win that much more. There's also people on the other side of that, like, think that he just got Lex Lugered. If you don't know the Lex Luger story, Lex Luger was, comes into WWE, WWF at the time as the narcissist. And eventually they repackage him and make him like the all-American boy. They give him a bus called the Lex Express. They have him, body slam Yokozuna on an aircraft carrier. It's a big deal. Yoko's the champion, so it's a big deal. This leads to the Rumble. Him and Brett wind up at Mania, both with a title shot. And they flip a coin, I believe, is how they decided who goes first and who goes second. So Luger goes first and loses after all this momentum of having him slam Yoko, of having him repackaged and putting him on the Lex Express and all this stuff. he was never the same. He was never booked the same. The people didn't care about him the same. It was never the same. Do I think that Cody is in danger of people not caring? Not at this point. He's got a lot of momentum, but I do think that it's possible that if they're not careful with how they book him going forward, he could fall into that trap. So they're going to want to make sure that, if nothing else, that they continue to book him in a way that makes sense, that he is over to the point where, he's working with people that make sense for him, for the character, and definitely makes sense coming off of Roman, because where do you go from Roman? That's the top guy. That's the top of the mountain. So the only way to go down from the top is to fall. I mean, that's why there's this fear that, like, did he get lugered? The other thing that I had a problem with in this match, I think I keep getting torn going back and forth. Was it too much interference? You had the Usos, you had Sammy and Kevin, you had Solo, you had Paul. I get it. They're all behind Roman, trying to keep him the champion, trying to keep the tribal chief as the head of the table. But did you need all of it? I mean, all of it. I don't know. I feel like Roman could have been pissed at the Usos for losing the belts in night one, and told him, don't worry about it. Me and Solo got it. And then Solo get thrown out. Because at the finish of the match, when the referee jumped out of the ring after he'd already counted the 3, he literally saw Solo. So it was like, he was thrown out. Something happened. Like, that can't be the way you do things. I mean, and as far as, the show overall and night number 2 overall, it definitely was not as good as night number 1. It almost felt a little snake bitten, between the women's match issues of, it not looking very strong, and Baszler possibly being hurt and showing up with one shoe, and then Balor's match getting stopped, and, then Shane getting hurt. It really felt like a snake bit night number 2 compared to number 1. But, I mean, overall, the main event is what you stayed for. It's what you wanted. Wasn't the result that myself or many people wanted, but it was one that leaves you going, what the fuck do they do now? Where do they go now? And that's what you want. And it makes Raw tonight must see. It makes you wonder, like, is Roman going to be there? Are they going to have Cody talk about what happened? Are they going to have, is Brock done? There was a lot of people talking about maybe Brock's done. Is Brock going to be there? There's a lot of these things. There's talks about Orton returning. There's talks about Matt Riddle returning. And the Raw after WrestleMania has always got surprises. It's always crazy. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. We will be back later this week to talk more about the Raw after WrestleMania and talk about AEW Dynamite, as this is the debut episode and debut week of the Grab a Hold podcast. So if you are looking for us, you can find us on the Spotify podcaster app. There is also an Instagram page at grab_a_hold or _hold pod on Instagram, as well as we will be having a YouTube channel. It's also known as the Grab a Hold podcast. So if you're looking for us on there, we'll be there, and our link will be in the bio on Instagram. As I said, this is me doing reviews and recaps and giving my opinion. From time to time, we'll have people on here to talk about what we saw. Like I said, I did have a friend over at WrestleMania this year, so maybe we'll have him on. Well, I have a couple people that are big wrestling fans, and we'll debate topics and go from there. So most episodes are going to be reviewing the weekly shows, and WrestleMania was a great way to kick that off. And 2 nights with a lot of action, a lot of fun, and a lot of things that a lot of people would be proud of. And happy to be doing this podcast. Happy to be having any comments or questions that you would like to mention or discuss on the podcast. Please leave them in the comments section. Leave them in comments on the Instagram page. And when we have the YouTube videos up, please make sure you leave them there. I am your host, Justin S., and this has been the Grab a Hold podcast.